Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Robert Mansell. I'm the Academic Director of the School of Public Policy, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to this event. On behalf of Jack Mintz, the School of Public Policy and the University of Calgary, we're pleased to be a partner in discussing a very important topic today. And we also want to express our appreciation to everyone here today to share their time, experience, and expertise in advancing an informed discussion about a very important topic. That topic is Canada's prospects in a rebalanced economy. Actually, I think it's more a rebalancing economy, which makes it a little more challenging than just a rebalanced economy. But in any case, a critical topic for Canada. I don't have to tell you that it's a small, open economy, small relative to the world. It's very open in that trade is our lifeblood. And without access to global markets for goods, services, funds, some cases technology, sometimes people, we will not be successful. I would also highlight that when you have shifting global markets, it's even more challenging, and we're seeing that in many, many areas, most immediately in terms of topics that hit the headlines over the weekend, where we get our financial capital, how we get our products to some of these new markets. So anyway, it's a very timely and important topic, and I hope you enjoy the day. It's a topic also that's very close to our hearts at the school. It's a type of thing we like to do. As our mission, we focus on providing practical, global, and a focused perspective on policy analysis. And I want to say just a few things about the school. We're fairly new, so you may not know that much about us. But if you want to learn more, if you just Google policyschool.ca, lots of information. Let me just tell you that we started in 2009 with the hiring of Jack Mintz as the Palmer Chair in Public Policy at the University of Calgary. Since then, we have grown very, very rapidly, and let me express that in terms of the number 40. We have over 40 people involved in writing research projects just for this year alone. We have over 40 students in our Master of Public Policy program, and we graduated the first cohort, some of whom I see in the audience, just this last November. We have had a number of executive programs across the country. We have, in the past year, over 40 events, conferences, workshops, lectures, and we are trying to do our share in building good policy capacity in Canada, informing and improving public policy discourse by bridging the gap between business, government, and academia, providing a global perspective, and hopefully a positive contribution to some of these very important and difficult issues. So with that, let me say thank you again for attending today, and wish you very fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. My name is John Manley, and I'm the president of the Canadian Council of Chief Executives. We're very pleased that we're able to partner with the School of Public Policy to organize this half-day conference on Canada in the Pacific Century. I might say that I think that Robert has given a brief description of the School of Public Policy, but the importance of studying and understanding public policy for Canadians is sometimes certainly understated and perhaps under-recognized. I used to think that when I thought about public policy, and when I was Minister of Finance, I had a lot of dealings with governments from around the world, and one of the things that struck me dealing with my counterpart from Argentina, at the time they were going through yet another currency crisis. They were confiscating foreign-owned property, in that case. It was property of Canada's Bank of Nova Scotia that concerned me. But when you compare Canada and Argentina around the year 1900, you'd see two countries that were very, very similar. In fact, Argentina had a higher GDP than Canada at the time, similar population, similar natural resource wealth, European immigration, universities and sophistication that probably exceeded Canada. 100 years later, Argentina is a continuing basket case, and Canada is a member of the G8 group of countries. And the difference, I'd suggest to you, is sound public policy pursued over the course of that century, no matter who was in power, building some of the key factors that make a country succeed and an economy succeed. The Canadian Council of Chief Executives is composed of about 150 CEOs from across Canada, many of whom are in attendance today, members from here in Alberta, where we have a very strong representation. One of the things that we try to do is to provoke debate and discussion around some of the important issues that we see coming towards us down the track, to help inform, to help crystallize commentary on issues that we believe are important. And for that reason, we decided that it was timely to begin talking about Canada in the Pacific century. This is a project we've been working on for almost 2 years. We published a series of papers, 9 papers in total, on various aspects of this shift in political and economic importance to Asia. These papers were published together in a special edition of Policy Options produced by the Institute for Research on Public Policy in September, at the same time as we hosted a 2-day conference in Ottawa. This symposium is the first in what we hope will be a series of smaller conferences that we will hold across the country, again following through on trying to raise awareness of what the implications are for shifts that are outside our control and influence, but which will have profound effect upon Canada. So in addition to thanking the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary, I suppose I should also thank one of your local members of Parliament, Prime Minister Harper, for kindly coming down with a decision late on Friday afternoon that has, if anything, made our discussions today even more topical and potentially more relevant, because we're dealing with facts rather than speculation. Of course, we planned it that way, and we're very happy that he collaborated with us. But we're going to launch what will be a very interesting morning, I think, with a keynote address by one of my former colleagues from the House of Commons, the Minister of Energy for Alberta, the Honourable Ken Hughes. He and I were elected together to Ottawa in 1988, although we sat on opposite sides of the chamber. I don't recall in those days anybody ever actually coming to fisticuffs on the floor of the House of Commons. I thought we were a more congenial group, I think, at the time, but who knows. Ken represented Macleod as the Progressive Conservative Member of Parliament. He served as parliamentary assistant to the Deputy Prime Minister. Following his term in Parliament, he was appointed chairman of the Headwaters Health Authority. Then he became the founding chair of Alberta Health Services in 2008. He's also an entrepreneur and a businessman. He's founded an insurance brokerage, Alpine Insurance Financial. He was interim CEO of an oil field services company, as well as director of Alberta Oil Sands Incorporated. Minister Hughes has some strong views on the importance of securing the capital investment and human capital necessary to develop Alberta's energy resources. He recently told the Globe and Mail that if Canada is not comfortable with investments from state-owned companies, we need to think about where we're going to get the money our country needs to develop the resources that we have in this country. Rejecting these kinds of investments, he said, would cost Canada hundreds of billions of dollars of investment, because this will set the tone for many other investments as well. Minister, we recognize that the energy industry is crucially important to economic growth and job creation in this province, but also across Canada. And on behalf of Canada's business leaders, I want to thank you for your strong leadership on this file. We look forward to your remarks this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Honourable Ken Hughes.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, John. I am actually really delighted to be here with you this morning, and I'm also grateful to the Government of Canada for making their announcement on Friday, so that we have more grist for the mill collectively, and a bit more insight into where the Government of Canada is going on this important issue. Well, I've been on the job as Energy Minister for 7 months now. Almost to the day, and I can tell you it's one of the best jobs in the country. It's a very exciting time for our province and for our country. You can feel the energy here in Calgary and across the province, especially up in northeastern Alberta. And of course, we do have challenges, but we have the kind of challenges that anybody in the rest of the world would love to have. I'm a proud Albertan. We've built a foundation in this province based on sound business principles, an entrepreneurial culture, excellence in leadership and innovation. You look at the innovations that's going on in the energy sector in this province, and it's as good as anything else anywhere else in the world in the energy business. And so we as Albertans can be very proud of what we contribute to a national agenda in terms of innovation and economic leadership. And we're determined to do that. And we're determined to do that and recognize, obviously, as John Manley has mentioned, that this is an economy of, it's about $300 billion sized economy annually that is driving much of the economy in the country, if not parts of the continent as well. And we recognize that that's incredibly important. We sit here in this province on the third largest oil and gas reserves in the world, behind Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. And we realize that that imposes upon us certain additional responsibilities, that immense opportunity, those immense resources imposes upon us perhaps a higher standard to do better, to perform better, to ensure that how we do things is done at the highest possible standards, and from an environmental perspective, from an engineering perspective, from a social impact perspective. These are values that we as Albertans embrace, and that the Redford government embraces very clearly in the many things that we're doing to ensure that we perform at the highest possible level, so that we continue to earn the social license to operate in this province. Well, we all know that we've been, and I know as a business person, we really have done very well. We've talked a good game in Alberta and in Canada about being global players, but actually we've been immensely dependent upon one market, that being the United States. And John and I were both elected in the free trade debate on different sides of the discussion. And that was obviously exceedingly important to Alberta's wealth and the opportunities that we face in this nation for the next 20 years. But now we're facing a new level of global competition, and a new level of competition within America as well. Of course, our economy in Alberta in particular has always been export-driven. We know that we need to export, but the competition of production of unconventional oil in America, and of course gas as well, but oil in particular recently, creates for us a challenge that we have to face head on. and we have to get to market, is the long and the short of it. If you look at the immense volume of bitumen and unconventional and conventional oil in this province, let's just talk oil. Gas, of course, is a similar model, but oil, if we just talk about oil, we need to get to Tidewater to get world price. It's as simple as that. So how do you get to Tidewater? You go west, you go south, you go east, and some people are talking about going north. So we have to look at all of those opportunities, and we as a government have been doing a lot of work over the last 7 months since I was appointed as Energy Minister. We've been working hard to ensure that we really get to the strategic positioning of what is in Alberta's interest. We are here as effectively the trustees on behalf of the people of Alberta for this immense resource. And what is in our best interest? Well, one simple way to look at that is that we need to secure the highest possible price for every barrel of oil that we ship out of this province. How do you do that? You get world price. How do you get world price? You get the Tidewater. So this is the fundamental strategic imperative that is driving us as the province of Alberta in working with other Canadians and, of course, folks south across the line to try to ensure that we have all of the access that we possibly can to markets, because the investments that have already been made and committed to in northeastern Alberta in particular means that if we don't get access to Tidewater, we actually are compromising the value that we should be getting for our own resources here in this province. You know, ever since Dingman number one was in Turner Valley in 1914. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary. Dingman number one was the first major strike of oil in this province. Ever since then, if you read the history of this province, we have never had enough capital nor enough human resources to develop our energy resources in this province. For the longest time, it was actually American talent and money that came across the line to work with us, not support from Central Canada in those days, in the early days. It was from America where most of the support came. And that developed perhaps a different perspective amongst people in particularly southern Alberta about the importance of working with others to develop our resources, and the importance of being open to investment from other parts of the world outside of Canada. And so we've always turned to foreign investment of one kind or another. Obviously, the security and stability of our resources, our highly educated workforce, our competitive royalty system are amongst the reasons why Alberta is one of the most attractive places to invest, and the tax regime in general as well. And I can tell you that we're also stepping up the game in terms of how we govern the regulatory oversight in this province. We just passed through the legislature in the last few weeks, Bill 2, which creates the new Alberta Energy Regulator. And that energy regulator is designed to combine the environmental aspects as well as the energy aspects of development in this province, so that applicants have certainty when they go into the system and seek to develop a project. But at the same time, we don't compromise one iota on our environmental standards as well. So we're going to the next generation of regulator in order to improve how it works in an efficient and an effective regulatory process, not just for applicants, but for landowners and for ensuring that our environmental objectives are met as well. We shouldn't be surprised that the world is beating its way to our door. If you look around the world, some 80% of the world's oil and gas assets are already owned by state-owned enterprises or national oil companies. Of that remaining roughly 20%, more than half of those resources are actually here in Alberta in the oil sands. And as a result, the world is beating its way to our door. To come here, to invest, to participate in the development of these immense resources is the largest development project in the world today. And as a result, we want to ensure that it is developed effectively, that we're meeting high standards. On the environmental side, we've recently announced that we've put in place an environmental monitoring model which is independent, which will report independently, independent of the government, will report independently, and will ensure that we monitor air, water, soil, and biodiversity in northeastern Alberta. We want to do things well when we want to be seen to be doing things well. And so we have to do things well and then also tell the story as well. Last year, the oil sands alone attracted over $22 billion in investments, and we don't expect that to slow down. You know, we've got investment from North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And of course, we welcome that. The announcement on Friday was an important, I think it's an important inflection point in the history of this country and in the history of the oil sands. And history will tell us what kind of an inflection point it is, and people will have an opinion about that this morning, I'm sure. But it's an important inflection point that we should not underestimate in how it will affect the future investment in the oil sands in this province. You know, we have a long history of the Chinese National Petroleum Corporation being in Alberta since 1992. And it's quite clear to us that while you might start out with quite different cultural behaviors in organizations, there are ways to intersect and to be have a constructive outcome in working with government-owned corporations. The investments of CNPC and PetroChina in Alberta have been largely partnerships and joint ventures. And these are partnerships obviously based on trust, common goals. Their continued growth obviously will bring great benefits to both parties. But building those relationships and creating trust is an important part of doing business with Asia and with Alberta. And that's true within Canada as well. As we look at our challenges of getting to tidewater, it is incredibly important that we as Albertans reach out and build bridges. This was one of the defining characteristics of that fairly volatile election we all went through in the spring in this province. And our view, and the Redford government's view, was that we needed to be building bridges and building relationships with the rest of Canada, with other parts of Canada, with the First Nations communities in other parts of Canada, including as well as governments and all players in the country, so that we could have that kind of give and take, and that people would understand that our motives are to perform at a high level, and that our motives are to ensure that we're successful, but we're successful on our terms and by our rules. When I was sworn in as minister in May, I hadn't been sworn in for more than 20 minutes when I was harassed by a Globe and Mail reporter who asked what was the key challenge of my tenure. And only knowing for 24 hours that I was going to be taking on this role, I hadn't given it that much thought, but my autonomic response was, well, I think we need to continue to earn the social license to operate in this province, and that is probably the most important thing that I have to work on as the energy minister in this province, together with my colleagues in the government. Whether it's an oil sands plant in northeastern Alberta, a pipeline or a power plant, and we've seen challenges on the pipeline front. Earlier in the summer, there were a couple of spills in the first few weeks of my tenure, and I took the initiative to call together the pipeline industry, and I asked them to step up to the plate, to work with us, to work with the Energy Resources Conservation Board, and to ensure that on the three aspects of how we operate pipelines, how pipelines cross watercourses, and on spill response, that we're performing at the highest possible level in this province. We have 400,000 kilometres of pipes in this province, and we need to be, we should be better than anybody else, because we actually do more of it than anybody else in this country. And so we're in the middle of that process, that analysis, and I expect to continue to work with the industry and push the industry to perform at a higher level, because there should be no reason why a spill in this province doesn't have first-class, world-class response the moment something goes wrong. That's what we would expect in this province. That's what we would expect in any other jurisdiction on this continent where Alberta-based or Canadian-based pipeline companies are operating. So we fully expect that there will continue to be campaigns against oil sands and pipelines. And the way that we address that, I believe, is that we work hard to perform well, and that we tell people what we're doing to perform well, and we continue to fund the innovation, the incredible innovation that's going on in this province. Well, with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to wrap up and take a few questions. I know that many people will have, I welcome questions and comments. We're very honored to have the group gathering here in Alberta, John, and I look forward to your comments. Thank you.
So stay right there. And the minister has graciously agreed to take questions. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. So, and I think there are roving microphones available in the room. So please give an indication that you'd like a microphone and fire away. Let's start with the second question, since it's always hard to get the first one. I think we see, yes, at the back.
Minister Bob Miller from Canadian Defence and Foreign Affairs Institute. I was just wondering if, after the announcement on Friday, you had a sense of what the downside might be of the government's new policy.
Well, given the risk of media might be in the room, I'll be judicious in my comments. There is the potential for less investment coming into oil sands in Alberta, and the impact of that is that it will simply increase the cost of capital, and that would make it that will add on one more little slice of cost of production in this province. That we already have challenges of the cost of doing business in Alberta. And that applies to just about anything. I saw it in my own business, which had nothing to do with the oil and gas business. I saw it when I was chair of Alberta Health Services. We pay more. We pay doctors, incidentally, 29% more on average in Alberta than in the rest of the country. We pay nurses more. We pay teachers more. This is a high-cost place to do business because of the competition between the private sector and all other sectors, and the oil and gas sector in particular. So we don't need a lot more cost drivers built into the system, but that might be one of the challenges that over time we might face. That's of course speculative. Overall, I would say, I think the Government of Canada had a very difficult decision to make, and when you look at the decision that they made, I think it balances Canadian interests not badly. The last thing we need as a province, and that the energy industry needs, is to have Canadians feeling really uncomfortable about any foreign investment. And so you have to modulate the amount of foreign investment and where it comes from. And that's not a bad objective from a public policy point of view and from a social license perspective. It was, we heard that it was a difficult decision in Cabinet, and the modulated nature of the decision would suggest that it probably was.
Michael Moore with the School of Public Policy. Mr. Minister, this was a complicated decision that they came down with, and if you read not very far between the lines, you can see that the policy could have tentacles reaching out into manufacturing firms or certainly other interests in other provinces, which takes us into the realm of public policy being made at the provincial level versus the federal level. And I wonder if you might just describe the process in which you and your peers are involved in shaping that policy at the federal level. After all, it is something that, at least in our case, came down as somewhat of a surprise. We might have expected a little more discussion or stirring, as it were, before it came out. And I wonder if you might just let us know how the the policy arena in the provinces has been invited in to participate at the federal level?
Good question. Well, there is a process related to the Foreign Investment and Review Act, and that process was followed with respect to the CNOC-Nexon proposition. Beyond that, the Government of Canada, I think, felt that it had to come up with certain guidelines, not waiting for an invitation to participate. You saw my comments. John quoted my comments in the Globe just in the last couple of weeks. And I made those comments because you could see that there was a debate going on in the federal cabinet, and I wanted to reinforce the fact that this was an important decision for Canada's economy for the long haul, and that they needed to be cognizant that this was a multi-hundred-billion-dollar decision that they were making over the next 5 years for the country. And so, but we also, I don't know about other provinces, we were engaged in both informal and formal processes by the Government of Canada. Anybody would always welcome more engagement, but we were appropriately engaged.
Good morning, Minister Hughes. My name is Gil McGowan. I'm president of the Alberta Federation of Labour. And at the risk of playing the role of the skunk at the family picnic,
go for it.
I did want to ask a question about price. In your remarks, you said that as a province, as the steward of the resource for the public, we need to secure the highest possible price for the oil we produce. And I would argue that we also have to make sure that we create as many jobs from the development of that resource as possible, and the best possible jobs. I'm just wondering if the provincial government has considered the possibility that the interests of CNOC and the Chinese government, when it comes to price, run counter to our interest in particular. We've been involved in the Gateway Pipeline hearings, and we've got access to a whole bunch of documents and heard testimony on issues that had not previously been public. We've looked at SEC filings, and it's clear to us that CNOC, Sinopec, PetroChina, and the other branches of the Chinese government operating as corporations want access to low-cost bitumen. So they want it as low price as possible. We want to sell it at the highest price. And here's our concern. Nexon is not just an oil producer, it's also an oil marketer, 300,000 barrels a day. They are probably, we're not entirely sure, main shareholders in the pipeline, in the Gateway Pipeline. And now they have, with Nexon's 7% and Syncrude's board, they have 16% ownership of our biggest oil sands producer, Syncrude. So our concern is that through CNOC, Sinopec, and other investments, that the Chinese are pursuing their national interest by controlling the development, the pipelines, and the marketing. And if they control the marketing, will they be marketing in our interest or theirs? And their interest is low price, not high price.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good point, actually. That's not skunk-like at all, Gil. That's actually a very good question and a very good area of discussion that we can have, and I'm sure others will have here as well. Really, if we get to world price, it's not all sweetness. If we get to world price for all of our products from the province of Alberta and we get to Tidewater, it's not all sweetness and light from there on in either. I mean, then we're actually part of a global market where we're subject to the usual vagaries of the commodities market, commodities markets. And as a result, we prices, there will be plenty of other people. It's not as though China can, even with China's might and breadth and depth, they can't get to a point where they can control the market. So there will always be transparent markers in the marketplace that tell you what the market really is. And that will then govern what we get as in terms of royalties in the province of Alberta. It will determine prices at critical price points along the way. And that transparency as a result of market forces is what is the force that balances out any one player trying to corner the market. And given their like 10% of the interest of producing oil sands today, which is roughly where it's in that order of magnitude, that's far from a dominant position in the marketplace in terms of bitumen production. The other part of that is that there are many players in the northern. Assuming Gateway goes through, there are many players in that as well. Nexen actually does today market on behalf of the government of Alberta. That's a process that we've opened up for open competition to have an open competition from interested parties to represent the Alberta Petroleum Marketing Corporation and market our products. So there's no assumption it's going to be with Nexen after that process is completed as well. So we're ensuring that we have access to transparent market signals. Now the other thing is, what I haven't mentioned, and which I'm sure you would appreciate, is the fact that there are many sort of strategic themes that we can follow. One is like, how do we get to West Coast access? How do we get to East Coast? What can we do that's helpful as a government of Alberta to help ensure that we get access to the Gulf Coast? But a really important theme is value added in this province, and that also involves capturing world price, but in Alberta. So a good example would be a gas to liquids plant. If that were to happen in this province, you take a very low price gas, relative even to oil prices, it's a low price on an energy basis, and you turn that into diesel, which trades at kind of a world price. You capture that value, but you capture it right here in Alberta. And so the value added aspect of this, as I've come to learn more and more about the industry, as I've wrestled with my colleagues on the issues that we face, I think value added is one of those things. I mean, if you look back at the history, Peter Lougheed and the creation of the Joffre plant at Red Deer, that didn't happen by accident. That happened because of a deliberate will of public policy. And I believe my colleagues and I believe I have not a lot of work to do with my colleagues when we see an opportunity to create the right public policy environment in which to allow that kind of thing to continue to happen in this province, because it creates a base of employment and a tax base and a consistent kind of performing economy relative to the volatility of oil and gas prices globally. So that's an important part of the strategic imperative that we have to pursue at the same time.
Well, I know there are more questions, but it's time to move on. We're just getting warmed up. There's going to be lots of time for discussion. So please join me in thanking Ken Hughes, Minister of Energy, for what has got our morning off to a very good start.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, John. Nice to see you.